Welcome to the Raising Mothers podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Kahn. I'm a wife, a mama to two, and a certified conscious parent coach practitioner. It is my mission to guide mothers in transforming the way they connect, communicate, and collaborate with their teen. Every week, I will be bringing you inspiring, empowering, and educational episodes that will give you the tools you need to consciously raise your teenager. All right, let's do this. Okay, you guys, this episode, we are going to be talking about something that is so important, and that is how us mamas can guide and support our teens to optimal physical and mental health. This topic is so important, but I feel like it can be so hard to navigate because, for one simple fact, and that is there is so much information out there, it can be absolutely overwhelming trying to navigate and even know where to start. So, in this episode, I was super mindful of wanting to bring on the best of the best to talk about this topic. And without a shadow of a doubt, the best of the best, the queen herself, the expert in all things nutrition and human performance is the one and only Kristen Blake. Kristen Blake is an IIN certified health coach with a master's of science in clinical nutrition and human performance. Her mission is to help other women through education, empowerment, and advocacy, take back their own health by harnessing the power of nutrition, biohacking, and ancestral lifestyle. I, about 2 years ago, really wanted to level up my own personal health and my family's health too. My kids were getting older, they were coming into the teen years, and I knew that, the power of nutrition, how it has on your mental and physical health. And so I was like, I need to level up. And so I joined Kristen's KB Code, which is a 12-week health program. And can I just say, I was blown away. I thought I knew a lot about nutrition and health, but when I entered this program, I was like, oh my gosh, I was mind blown about how much I didn't know. But this program was so beautifully designed by Kristen that, yes, she gives you so much information, but she does it in a way that takes you through attainable steps so that you can easily apply it and actually see the transformation. There are so many things out there where you get this information, you're like, okay, cool, now what? But Kristen totally walks you through it. And so, because this program had such a huge impact on my personal health and my family's, I knew at some point, I had to have Kristen over here on the pod so that the listeners here could also walk away feeling confident, empowered, and educated and excited to take their family's health to the next level as well. So, without further ado, I want to welcome Kristen to the Raising Mothers podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that glowing intro. I'm so flattered and humbled and excited to be here. Thank you.
Okay. So tell us a little bit how you got here. You're a mom of 3 boys, but how did you start or come to the place where you're at doing what you do?
Yeah, I had two stories that kind of converged together to take me to where I am now. And one of them was my own past struggles with chronic illness. I was always sick. I was always tired, and I had rashes and fevers. And I went down all the conventional medicine rabbit holes possibly out there and really wasn't getting anywhere. And so I just kind of started to resign to the fact that I was always going to feel like garbage. And around the same time, my husband was playing for the LA Lakers, and they had just hired a fantastic doctor who is also a nutritionist to overhaul the entire team's medical approach and integrate nutrition into their approach. And she worked really closely with the families because, of course, the wives are the ones that are actually going out and doing the grocery shopping and doing the cooking. It's not the husbands; they're never
Right.
home. They were always on the road and busy. So it was up to us to learn about the nutrition and prepare healthful meals for when they got home. I loved it. I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. I was like the spokesperson for it. I was hosting all of the meetings at my house when Dr. Kate would fly in and teach us all these nutrition new things for me at the time. And we started implementing that into our family and into all of our diet and lifestyle. And I started to feel better, better, and better. And my kids, some of their issues started to clear up as well. They had asthma, eczema, allergies, and some of this started to clear up too. So that was huge. Now, of course, all around that same time, my husband tore his ulnar collateral ligament off the bone, which is a ligament in your elbow. Tore it clear off, and his options were either a Tommy John surgery, which is basically would have been career ending for him. The age he was at, it's a 1.5 year recovery. They have to take um, some tissue, not or muscle out of your leg and put it into your elbow. It's not good.
Oh,
So that was option one. And then option two was immobilization PRP, which is platelet rich plasma, and nutrition, and like going hard on nutrition, anti-inflammatory, low carbs, no sugar, tons of phytonutrients, all the colors, all the vegetables, all the things. My husband was like Mr. McDonald's Jack in the Box. So we were like, you know what? Let's try it. Let's do it. And he did it. He went all in. He ditched all the Jack in the Box, the McDonald's, and I went all in, incorporating everything that Dr. Kate had taught us. And when we were done with that 8-week immobilization period, he was able to return to play. Never had an issue after ever again. I thought for sure his elbow was just going to be like tissue paper and just fall off again. Like, how can this actually
yeah.
work? And it did. We use a lot of bone broth too for that glucosamine, chondroitin, those healing factors, and it worked. But not only did it work on his elbow, his knees, he said, felt 20 years
Oh
younger.
my word.
And that was really big. He was like, because his knees were bone on bone at that point. He had been playing his whole life. He was in his 30s. Everyone else was retiring that was his age in the NBA. And he went on to have many more years of his successful career. So I saw firsthand the power of nutrition for myself. I was feeling better. My kids, their issues were clearing up. My husband, he was rejuvenated, he had new knees. I was absolutely hooked. I loved it. And so, again, I had tried all the other things for myself leading up to that. And then this opened up my eyes to this whole other world of looking at your body
Yeah.
holistically and looking at what you're putting into your body, what you're putting on your body, and treating things at more of a root cause level. And so I started going down that rabbit hole. I went to IAN just to learn how to be a health coach for myself and my family because I thought it was fascinating and really cool. And I wanted to learn how to do it literally just for myself. And everyone around me started noticing, well, your kid's eczema is gone and you look better and this is better and this is better. What are you doing? Everyone wanted to know. That's when I realized, okay, I have to do this as a career. This is my calling. My purpose on earth is to help other people get to that place where the new place where I was at, where I felt amazing. And so I wanted to reach back and help pull up other women who were struggling with their health for themselves and their families. So that's when I went and got my master's degree. I also became a certified autoimmune coach. I've done certifications for gut health and hormones and more. And I absolutely love what I do today.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that story literally just gives me chills because it is so fascinating how food and nutrition can be so healing and life giving. Um,
Yeah.
it's crazy, and it's just so cool how God created everything, right? Because it's like we literally have at
Yes.
our fingertips. But the thing is, it's at our fingertips, but it's so hard to navigate and know what to do. And
Mm-hmm.
so people like you who do what you do, um, are just trailblazers for us because it's like you give a starting point and guide along the way. So I mean, what you do is amazing.
Oh, thanks.
So tell us the ages of your boys.
12, 14,
Okay,
16.
so you have one preteen and two teenagers. So, as we're talking about teens' health today, not only do you have all of your educational background, but you also are in the thick of it. So, your
Mm-hmm.
words are going to be so powerful. I'm so excited for everyone to hear because we know that, the adolescent years, it actually starts from the age of 12 and goes all the way to 25. And in these
Mm-hmm.
adolescent years, there are huge shifts and transformations within the adolescent from the brain, physical, and emotional. Today, I really wanted to focus on the brain and the physical, knowing that it all kind of goes together and the things you do for the brain and the physical aspects will also help the emotional because we know that nutrition has a direct effect on hormones.
Yep.
So let's start with the teenage brain.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say that us as moms can do to provide um, appropriate nutrition and support for the developing teenage brain?
Love this. All right. So I'm going to start by giving an all encompassing answer and then I'll break it down from there. So we want to eat real whole foods and avoid processed foods as much as possible. And I know that's a lot easier said than done. Kids are on the go, they're busy, they want to eat what their peers are eating. And there's certainly ways that we can navigate that. And we can talk more about that as well. But within that, if you're able to just eat more actual food and avoid some of the processed food, you're going to be hitting some of my key indicators for the teenage brain. One of them is omega 3s. We want a healthy balance of omega 3s to 6s. 6s are inflammatory, 3s are anti inflammatory. 3s are so good for brain health. This is why pregnant women are told to take a prenatal vitamin that has EPA, DHA, omega 3s in it. It's very important for developing brains. So how do we do that? We need to eat seafood, salmon, things like that. Fatty fish are fantastic for omega 3s. You're not going to find that in some little protein bar or cereal or things like that. We also want to avoid food dyes. Food dyes are terrible for brains. There was a study called the Southampton 6 where they investigated various additives and preservatives and chemicals to see their effects on children's brains. Wow. And the end result was what you would expect. It's not great. One of the biggest ones that stuck out to me is red dye number 40 was shown to chelate zinc from the brain. So what that means is actually pulling the zinc out of the brain, and they were able to measure in high output in these children's urine. So they're peeing out all this zinc. What do we need zinc for? Attention, focus, brain growth, also overall growth and development. Zinc is really important for growth. So my boys are always like, Mom, how can I get taller? Stop eating food dye. Really? So I love to use this type of knowledge and teach them. And that then helps them to make better choices, because I think that's a struggle that's really common with moms is how can we get our kids to buy into this and eat healthily? And I know that you had a book that you've used with your kids. I had my kids kind of create their own book back in the day where we tried to teach them this food has this in it and this does that. And so they're able to connect those dots and make those choices on their own. And my kids are obsessed with being tall because their dad, like I said, was in the NBA. They all want to play basketball. So anything I can tie back to height, they're like, I'm in. So zinc is one that's important for growth. And then it's also important for brain health. So avoiding those red food dyes. How do you do that? Avoiding processed foods, because processed foods are full of dyes in the US. So the outcome of that study in the European Union was they decided to label foods that had food dyes may increase hyperactivity in children. The US, we had a hearing and lots of back and forth arguing and lobbying, and they decided, nah, we're fine. So we don't have that label here. So people don't have this information. Like you said before, it's really tricky to navigate. And we are working at a bit of a deficit sometimes where we're not given that information. So avoiding processed foods, because they're not labeled over here like they are there, but they can increase hyperactivity and decrease attention. We want our kids to be able to pay attention and learn. Right. It's going to make their lives a lot easier at school. So we also want to do as much ancestral food as possible. This one is a little bit tricky with kids because they might not love the taste of beef liver and tongue and heart and things like that. But there are ways you can sneak it in there. So one thing is bone broth. So you can make bone broth, and that's going to be really rich in a lot of these amazing healing factors, like I said, that we use to help my husband's elbow. And bone broth is something that's become a lot more popular now. So it's easier to find, but you can also make it super cheap. Just go to the butcher and ask for the parts that no one wants. Chicken backs, chicken feet are really high in that collagen. Wow. And they're going to make this like really gelatinous jelly type of a broth. And it's so cheap because nobody wants those. So you can make your own, you can buy it. It's really easy to find. And then you can use that in cooking. So you can make your rice in that instead of water. You can make soups, chilies, stocks, all kinds of things. So that's one way you can kind of sneak that in and incorporate that. You can also buy ground beef that has a certain percentage of ground organ meat in it. So US Wellness Meats is one that has this, I think it's Braunschweiger is what they call their one that has the organ meats ground up, and it's like 20% organ meat and then 80% is ground beef. And they don't know that they're not just eating a burger. You know, when you make that into a burger patty and you season it, they don't know that there's organ meat in there, and they maybe you want to tell them, maybe you don't. That's your choice. But you're able to get some more organ meats in there. We used to eat nose to tail. We used to eat the whole animal. And now it's like boneless, skinless this and that, and you're
Yeah.
missing so many nutrients that way. So eating real foods, whole foods, not the processed version of it, is going to help with all of those. And then we also want to make sure that we're getting as many vegetables as possible,
Mhm.
which that also can be tricky with kids
Right.
sometimes. And we want to get the wide spectrum. So we don't want to just eat peas or corn. We want to also bring in all the different colors. You can have cabbage and sweet potato and tomatoes. Think about all the colors of the rainbow and try to hit on as many of those as possible, because those all have different antioxidants, phytonutrients in them, vitamins, minerals. They all are going to have a different profile, and we need all of them.
Right.
So the more diverse you're able to eat, the better when it comes to plants and animals.
I love that. Now, I know a lot of, moms who might be listening, they are might be listening and thinking like, okay, this sounds awesome. Like I totally want to do this, but how do I start? Because you touched on it a little bit. Kids like are so resistant, or when they go to school, they're like, well, so and so, my kids do this all the time. So and so has, this in their lunch, and like that's what I want. Or if you pack a healthy lunch, it comes back and then you throw it away. Did you have this like adjustment phase, and with your kids, and if so, like how did you get them to eventually eat more healthy than not healthy?
Yep, definitely. It is definitely an adjustment phase. I love the way you put that. And you'll be familiar with this from going through the KB code. I like to teach good, better,
Mm,
best. I like to teach baby steps. So everything is on a spectrum. You don't have to go from eating like Fruit Loops all day to growing your own kale and only eating
yeah,
that. There's a spectrum in there. And so we can just kind of slowly but surely baby step our way along from what might be a slightly better option, and then a slightly better from there. And you can slowly go from good to better to
right,
best as people are ready. And you don't want to push anybody into a place where they're not ready, because that causes complete revolt.
right.
So before the whole thing with my husband and the elbow, I used to like try to make him be a little healthier. But the more I would try, the more I'd be like, no, I just want to go eat ice cream at McDonald's.
Totally.
And with the elbow, he bought in. But it's a lot easier when you slowly go through the process with someone and allow them to dictate the speed at which they go.
Right.
Another thing that I found really helpful for my kids was allowing them to take ownership of that process.
Mm-hmm.
So again, teaching them about this food does this for you, this food does that. What do you choose? And letting them choose, even if it's not the choice I would have wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I let them choose. And over time, they would start to see how they felt and what the outcome was. Because that's another thing that I teach a lot in my group program is how to tune into your body and your symptoms and listen to them.
Right.
So if my kid's getting a headache all the time or really tired all the time, I'm like, well, let's talk about what you put in your body today and how you fueled it. Did you drink any water? No. Okay, that might be why you got a headache. Did you eat any protein? No, that's probably why you're tired.
Right.
And once they start to learn and listen to their body, they're going to make much better choices all on their own.
Yeah.
And then another thing that we did, again, to get them to take ownership and buy in and do what's right for them and not force them into it, was we made fun little taste tests out of
Oh, cool. I
everything.
like that.
So I would go to the store and I'd buy like 5 kinds of yogurt and see which one they liked best out of the ones that were organic and didn't have red food dye in them, because all they wanted was like the Danimals that their friends
Yes.
had that are red dye number 40,
Mm-hmm.
disgusting, full of
Mm-hmm.
sugar. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'd rather you guys not have that, but you can pick which one you like. So I go and we do this whole taste test and we make it kind of fun, like who likes this flavor or that flavor. And then we would write down the brands that they like. And the next time you go to the store, well, that's the one that we're going to buy. So we know that about yogurt. Let's taste test chips today,
I love that.
because I let them have chips. They're kids. They want
Yeah.
chips. Would I rather they ate apples instead?
Yeah.
Yes, but they want chips. So we're going to pick out chips that have some of the healthier oils in them. We're going to avoid the seed oils, the omega-6 oils, because those are inflammatory. So we steer away from the ones that have canola, sunflower, safflower, and I'll grab some that are like avocado oil, coconut oil.
Mm-hmm.
I'll buy 5 different chips. Which ones do you like the best? Which brand? Which flavor? Do you like the salt and vinegar? Do you like the regular? Okay, you like this brand? Write that down. We've got that. So we slowly went through all of the different foods and found our favorites. And there's still times where they eat things I wish they didn't, but they're taking ownership of it, which I think is really important, because then you're creating adults that know how to listen to their body, tune in, and fuel their body in the best way possible for themselves.
Yes, and I love how you said, teaching them ownership and also tuning into what feels good and they're like having them recognize the difference. When I eat this type of chip, I get a headache or I feel, whatever. But when I eat this, then I feel more energized. I feel strong. Because that creates long lasting habits. And that's what we want. Don't want it to just be a phase. I want it to be like a lifestyle change. And so I love how you said, taking ownership and really having them tune in to what their body likes and how their body feels when they eat well. Is there a difference for the a girl's brain and a boy's brain as far as what they need, or is it pretty standard?
For the brains, it's pretty
Okay.
standard. When it comes to hormones, we're going to see a lot more differentiation. When it comes to growth, we'll see more changes, especially if boys are going to need a lot of protein. They are going to build more muscle
Hmm.
naturally. Women have more estrogen and progesterone than men. So we see a lot more differentiation there. But with the brains, we want to focus on zinc, omega 3s, folate, iron, iodine, choline, vitamin A,
Hmm.
B12. Did I say D yet? Vitamin D also.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. Okay, awesome. Before moving away from the brain and now more into the physical aspect, are there any other points or important takeaways about the brain that you want to mention?
Sleep is so important. That one's probably obvious, but
Hmm.
your brain needs you to sleep.
Yes.
It's not going to function well without sleep. And I think that that's tricky with kids, especially preteens and teenagers. Like mine do not want to sleep. I've got them to buy in by reminding them that's when they
Uh huh.
grow. That's when your brain is going to rejuvenate, repair, clean things out, consolidate memory, which then makes it easier to learn and develop your brain moving forward.
Absolutely.
So I think I've got them pretty much bought into sleep because they want to get
Yeah.
taller, but it's also good for your brain.
Absolutely. I love how you brought that up because it's even for our immune system, right? Like the body repairs at night.
Mhm.
And so
Yep.
sleep is everything. But you're right, for teens, it is challenging. Sometimes I
Mhm.
think a lot of, when you're in the early stages of motherhood, you're like, oh, this is exhausting more physically kind of. But then you get to like the
Yep.
teenage years and you're like, oh my gosh, like this could be mentally exhausting because it's like you have to tell them like, sleep is good for you. You need to go to bed earlier. And they're like, but I don't want to. And it's like, it's this push and pull when they become teenagers that
Mhm.
can almost feel more exhausting. So I love how you brought
Yep.
that up because it is so important. And then in today's culture, we have the phones and the devices. And so really, really honing in on limiting that as well because that affects brain
Yep.
development.
We confiscate those at night before they go to
And
bed. They don't
yep,
like it, but we're like, "Hand it over."
totally, because it affects the brain development and ultimately your sleep. And
Mhm.
if you're not getting your good sleep, like you said, the brain is not
Yep.
restoring, repairing. Um, okay, so let's move into the physical aspect. For growing bodies, I know you mentioned zinc in the brain, and that is also very important for the growing body and vitamin D. What else would you say from a nutrition perspective is optimal, important for optimal physical health?
Iron is another one that's really important. Iron deficiency anemia is the number one deficiency in the world.
Mm.
And it's more prevalent for girls than boys because every month when they menstruate, they're losing blood and so they're losing iron. So, focusing on getting enough iron is really key as well. And it's easy to do if you're eating enough meat. If you're not eating a lot of meat, then it becomes a lot trickier.
Hmm.
Even the non heme sources of iron, you can get lots of them, but it's not going to do the same thing as the heme source. So, a heme source is an animal source. So, chicken, steak, turkey, things like that are heme sources of iron. Non heme sources of iron are going to be lentils, beans, things like that, and it's harder for that to be absorbed by the body. It has a much lower bioavailability.
Okay.
So you have to eat so much of it. you have to eat so much that sometimes we have gastrointestinal effects from it, from the beans and the grains and things like that. It can be really harsh on the stomach, difficult to digest. One of the reasons why you're not absorbing as much of it as you are from a heme source is that plants don't really want to be digested. They
Okay.
want to come through whole so that they are excreted back into the soil and they can grow again. So they have defense mechanisms around them, like phytic acid, that will keep it from being fully digested. So the body is trying to break it down, but there's all these things blocking the breaking down of it. So you're not absorbing as much of the iron from it. And they're called anti-nutrients, these compounds that a lot of plants have, and they will block the absorption. They'll make it much more difficult. So it's so much easier to get your iron if you're having an appropriate amount of animal sources. So it's not that you can't have plants, but you want a nice balance. You don't want to rely on them too heavily. Otherwise, you might end up with an iron deficiency, which again is the most common deficiency in the world.
And if you had a diet primarily based on plants, so say vegan, right? And not as much as like you're saying the vitamins from the actual animal source, it can this have a direct effect on the brain development as well?
Yes, it can. So vegetarians and vegans are going to have different outcomes. Vegetarians are still able to get what they need if they're eating a properly designed vegetarian diet, which emphasis on the words
Right.
properly designed, because there's a lot of people that are saying, oh, I'm a vegetarian, and they're not even eating vegetables,
Yeah.
but they're just not eating animals. So instead, they're eating a lot of processed foods and little puffs and
Yeah.
doodles and crackers and things like
Hmm.
that, and they're not actually getting any nutrition in. So there's a big difference between an improperly designed and a properly designed
Right.
vegetarian. But going off of a properly designed vegetarian diet, they're still able to get choline, which is really important for your brain because that's going to be in egg
Okay.
yolks. They're going to still be able to get zinc, things like that. But vegans are completely avoiding all animal
Right.
products. So that's they're also excluding eggs, honey, dairy, which there's a lot of. Dairy's not like my favorite food group on the planet because it can be inflammatory, but it also can be really healthful and healthy and easy to get calcium and vitamin
Right.
D from dairy. So vegans, if they are avoiding dairy, they could end up with a vitamin D deficiency, which is one of the next highest levels of deficiencies in the world is vitamin D,
Hmm.
especially if you're in an upper latitude.
Like where?
So I know that's where you are,
Yay.
and I don't know how many of your listeners are out there too, but that upper part of the US and then up above that are much more likely to have a vitamin D deficiency. There's not as much
Yeah.
sun. It's just not there.
Hmm.
And vitamin D deficiencies play a really big role in brain health and growth and development and
Right.
hormones as well. Vitamin D is an important precursor to estrogen.
Mm.
Girls need estrogen. So if we are missing out on all the animal things, it's definitely going to take a toll on growth, development, and brain health.
Okay, that's so fascinating. Um, when you and I have spoken before, and you had a really, I think you said seaweed is a really good source for iron for girls too. And something about broccoli, I remember you saying does something for girls' hormones. Would you mind touching on
Okay,
that?
so iodine, seaweed is really good for
Iodine.
iodine, which is awesome for thyroid health.
Okay.
Something else that's really good for thyroid health is selenium, which is going to be it. All you need is like one Brazil nut a
Okay.
day, and you'll get your daily intake of selenium. So a Brazil nut once a day, some seaweed here and there, and your thyroid is going to be much happier. And then broccoli has sulforaphane. It's a cruciferous vegetable. So in that same family, we have broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts. Those are all going to be really high in diindolylmethane, or DIM, which some people might have heard DIM. You might have seen it like as a supplement. If somebody has really heavy periods, oftentimes they'll be handed DIM, diindolylmethane, and it helps regulate estrogen. And I think it's an overused supplement, but that's a side note. The better way is for girls to just eat it in
Right.
food and to eat those cruciferous vegetables and eat enough broccoli. And that's going to help naturally regulate their estrogen. I think the DIM supplements can be a little bit too high, a little bit too much.
Okay.
And you have to really know what you're doing when you're extrapolating one singular thing from food and taking it in a really high dose. It can go wrong really easily
Mhm.
if you don't know what you're doing.
Totally.
So the easier way is to just eat food or work with a professional that's trained in using supplements and they know exactly how to do that.
Right. Awesome. I love that. Okay, so what about boys and their testosterone? We mentioned estrogen for girls. What about testosterone for the boys?
Yeah, yeah. They usually have plenty. So some of the things that are tanking our testosterone in males, however, is toxins. So I don't know if you've heard about that, but the levels of normal testosterone in men have been dropping over the past decade.
Wow.
So much so that they've changed the lab reference ranges. So before the lab reference range was, I forget the exact numbers, but it's over here. And then they notice, oh, everyone's creeping down here. Let's just change the ranges there because reference ranges are really just an average of people that go to that lab in that region.
Mhm.
It's not optimal. It's not functional health. It's not what's best for you. It's just this is an average of people that go to a lab. A lot of people going to labs are not the healthiest people. That's why they're going to the
Totally.
lab. And so they have moved the level down repeatedly instead of saying, wait, what's going on? When it goes down, it's low and it should be flagged. They're like, nah, just move the goalpost
Mhm.
and let's just accept it.
Mhm.
So toxins are endocrine disruptors, and that can lower testosterone significantly. So that's going to be like Axe body spray.
Yes.
Like we don't want fake fragrances,
Deodorants.
things like that. Yep, deodorants, fragrances, Glade plugins, like anything fake and chemically is not good, and that is lowering testosterone. Um, and then some other things are lack of sleep.
Mhm.
So sleep is huge for proper testosterone levels and sunlight.
Mhm.
Um, I read a study the other day that said that you can increase your testosterone levels by 20% by going outside in the sun for 20 minutes a day.
Stop.
So I told my boys, and they're like running out there because they want to be all big and
Yeah.
muscular for basketball. So they're like standing outside now.
Oh my goodness.
So we want sun, we want sleep, we want non toxic products on our bodies, and then optimal nutrition, vitamin D, animal meats. We need enough protein,
Mhm.
all of those good
Oh my
things.
gosh. You know, talking about like what we put in our body is just as important as what we put on our body because correct me if I'm wrong, you know this better than I do, but the skin, isn't it the largest organ in the body? And
Yes.
so whatever
Yes.
is put on the skin is absorbed internally and can affect all
Yes.
the different things. And that can be something that could be overwhelming too to navigate. And I love in your program how you're like, just start small. Like, here's the goal, and this is how you obtain it. So, as you're listening today, if you're like, okay, this is amazing information, but I still feel a little bit overwhelmed, just start slowly replacing things, slowly replacing
Mhm.
foods, slowly replacing products. Beauty Counter is an amazing
Mhm.
starting point, I feel like, because they pretty much have
Yep.
anything that you need that goes on the
Yep.
body. Are there any other um, companies that you would recommend? I think I remember we were talking before, you mentioned replacing like one of your boys wanted like a cologne or something. And so you found
Mhm.
something that was awesome for that, right?
Mhm. Yeah, a bunch of my followers, I put this on Instagram. I was like, what cologne should I look
Yeah.
into for my kid? And because all of my followers are total
Yeah.
health nuts like me. And so I knew they'd have good
Yeah.
ideas. And everybody was saying Dime,
Dime.
Dime,
Okay.
Dime.
I'm going to
Yeah.
put that.
So we got him Dime
Uh-huh.
cologne. And then he uses all Beauty Counter
Yeah.
products beyond that. So he has Beauty Counter shower gel, face wash, lotion, everything's Beauty Counter. But he and my other kids, like, they don't care what they smell like at all. But he was like, I really want some cologne. So we got him Dime. And then my favorite deodorant for boys is by Primally
Mhm.
Pure. And I think I have a code for that somewhere on my website. I think it's like KB Wellness 15. But
Okay.
they have a charcoal deodorant. So
Yes.
it absorbs the odors, which I think is genius because boys are so smelly on like another
Oh my
level.
gosh.
And I use it too. I like their charcoal deodorant too, but I think it's especially good for boys because it's not really like
Yeah,
fragrancy that could either, smell kind of girly or compete with the cologne or whatever. There's like no fragrance to their regular
I
charcoal
love
one, but it just absorbs odor. And Primarily Pure is another good brand that's like completely non-toxic. It's literally like edible. Like all of their ingredients are like honey, olive oil. Like it's like very clean and pure. So my top two favorites are definitely Beauty Counter and then Primarily
Okay,
Pure.
awesome. And as Kristen has mentioned these things, I will be sure to link everything up in the show notes, including her website. So you can go there. There is an actual tab that you can click on that she does have codes for different companies. I'll link her Instagram so you could follow her on there. She always daily puts so much great content out that is everybody can use. Um, and, as I was saying, she, in her KB code, she lays it out so beautifully that it makes it so easy to actually apply it to your life so you can have a transformational health experience as well. I mean, she even goes as far as, putting grocery lists together for you and telling you what meats to look for, eggs, like all the things. So if you are loving what you heard, you're like, this is what I need for my family. She has another cohort coming up starting here for the KB code that you can do apply. How does that work, Kristen?
That one, they can just hop on the website and register once registration opens, which is March 20th through the
Okay.
26th. So we have a pretty short period there because, as you know, we keep the group
Yes.
small so that I can give everyone the individual attention that they need and really walk alongside women because, like you said, it's so overwhelming. There's so much information, and I want to create the biggest impact and the biggest transformation in the shortest period of time
Mhm.
possible. So it's just 12 weeks of me walking alongside them. So we only have a 6-day registration and we keep it at a really small group. We run it once or twice a year as my schedule allows. So I'm super excited to have another cohort go through. It's really one of my favorite things that I do is this group setting because it's such a good
Mhm.
combination of some community and then also live teaching and then all the materials and resources I put together. And I get to watch these aha moments and light bulbs and transformations. And it's so fun and so rewarding, like I said, to walk alongside them because it's so overwhelming if you're just floundering out there alone by yourself, like clicking on random Instagram posts all over the place. And you're like, what do I do next? And who do I listen to? And what's happening? It's so overwhelming. So that's why I created this program to be able to just walk people
Mhm.
through step by step, keep it simple, good, better, best. It's all in a spectrum, doesn't have to be perfect. We just take baby steps all the way through.
Absolutely, and mission accomplished because it is absolutely phenomenal. So I will
Oh, thank
be
you.
sure to link up the KB code in the show notes as well. You could just click the link and go ahead and apply for that. And the cool thing is too, when you complete the KB code, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have to do the 12-week program, and then you can become a member. Is that right, or is your
The membership we actually did just open to the public
oh,
as
okay,
well. So you don't have to go through the KB code anymore to be in the
okay,
membership. But you're right. Previously, you had to go through the KB code to be in the membership. But now we're opening up the doors a bit more for that too and allowing other people to come in and join the membership. But I think it's ideal if you go through the KB code first because you're like, okay, I'm up to speed. I'm ready to go. I'm
yes.
here. But either way, people are then allowed to join either after the KB code or before it. They can join the membership. And then we keep these conversations going where we can keep going deeper and going down the different rabbit holes because inevitably things will come up on someone's health journey that they are going to need more help with. And I'm able to support them through the membership
Mhm.
in that way as well.
Absolutely. And yes, I totally agree. You should do the KP code first because it's kind of like if you want to build a house and you don't know how to build a house, but you're just like, I'm just going to go for it. It's kind of like that. Like, do the KB code so you have the tools and the skills. And when you get into the membership, you're
Yes.
like, oh, everything clicks, like the light bulbs go off, and you
Yes.
won't be like, wait, what? What about that?
Yes.
And like there's so many master classes that Kristen does in the KB membership. Like you have one in
Mhm.
June, I think, for like ADD, ADHD, where you're doing a deep dive on that, which because of
Mhm.
foods and all
Yep.
the processed things that we eat. A lot of us have
Yep.
children who have these symptoms. So there's just so much good information. I joke with one of my girlfriends, I'm like, the KB membership for me is like check-ins with like my primary care physician. I feel like I don't even need them because I'm you do such a phenomenal job of empowering people with the information to make the best decisions for them and create like an overall
Mm.
healthy life where they don't have to keep going to the doctor and getting medicine. Like sometimes that is
Mhm.
needed. I understand that. But
Mhm. Totally.
you do a really good job of building a really solid foundation for people and their families to thrive. So KB code, a must, the membership after, it's like a lifeline. And again, I'll put all the links of how you can connect with Kristen more and all of her resources in the show notes. Before, yeah,
And you're going to have a
yes,
code
10% off.
that all of your listeners are going to get 10% off of the KB code, the KB club,
Yes.
like 10% off of everything, which is super exciting
Yes.
that we got that all set
Yes, I
up and
know.
we're able to have that code for you
Yeah,
guys. I
I
love
was
it.
super excited about that. And another resource too that Kristen has, she co-wrote an ebook on sport nutrition for athletes, for children. So I'll put that link in there as well if you have an athlete and you want more information on that. Before we go, I think two questions I ask every guest, and that the first one is, what would you tell your younger mom self? So as a young mom, looking, or as a mom now looking back at your younger mom self, what would you tell her?
I would tell her it's all going to be okay. All the things you're super stressed about, they all end up okay. Just put one foot in front of the other. Take your time. You're going to get through it. I think as a young mother, I was super overwhelmed by everything. I had 3 kids in 3 years. My husband was traveling all the time. Everything just felt
Mhm.
awful and overwhelming, but it all turned out okay. And it was all part of the
Yeah,
journey. So I would tell myself, enjoy the journey. It's okay. It's all going to be okay. Just one step at a
I
time.
love that. And what is one thing that you would want to leave the Raising Mothers listeners with? What piece of advice? It could be anything, a quote, something that has helped you in life, in motherhood, anything.
I want to leave them with you're capable of more than you know.
Mm, I love that.
And I love that you said before that you feel empowered by working with me the membership and the KB code, because that makes me so, so happy. That's my mission,
Mm,
is to empower women to take back their health.
mhm.
And I think sometimes we discount ourselves. We're like, I can't do this, or this is hard. And women are so strong. We are incredible. So you are all capable of more than you know. Don't give
I
up.
love that. So, so good and so true. Well, thank you so much, Kristen, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
I'm literally so excited that you took the time to hang out with me here in this space, and I would absolutely love to connect with you more. You can find me on Instagram or visit my website at ashleycahn.co. That's ASHLEYKAHN.co. I'll see you there.